Another Sunday, another case of the Scaries to start your work week. Welcome to the newest edition of the Sunday Scaries, where we have all your gore, lore, and more, covering all the latest horror happenings, slicing open all the latest horror news, and dissecting it bit by bit, finding all those juicy innards. Pour that cup of coffee and turn on your fright lights while we take you on a tour of terror. And yes, a little break here on the channel, but have no fear. Your curators of carnage are back to give you all the horror news. We did take a little break, but no, we are not in the ashes. Tommy Jarvis uncovered us and brought us back to life as our favorite Jason Lives. But yes, we're back. We took a little break to make us a little horror content of our own. So if you haven't checked that out, it is up on the channel now, doing pretty well. Our little trailer drop.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm very happy to see all the positive responses to it. I cannot wait, again, just to reiterate from the announcement video to get this picture out to you guys. The timeline for that, if you watch the announcement video, we go into a little bit more detail of it, but it's all going to hinge on whether or not we make it into the festival or not. And it's not like they have any kind of like hold on us or anything. I would just like to, if we can get it into the festival, it would probably just make more sense to show it after it premieres there. But yeah,
It's the
and we're still working
suspense.
on it. Yeah, we're still like working on it. Our sound guy Adrian Jones, he's a member of the band Half Past Late. Lovely guy, came over and helped us knock out the sound for this project, and him and I have still been working on the sound design even after we submitted a festival cut. So we're hard at work on that. Like I said in the video, I think we're about 85% of the way there. So it's like we're just gonna keep chugging away at it. And yeah, sooner rather than later, you guys will all get to feast your eyes on what we've created. But yes, thank you so much for all the positive response on the trailer.
Yeah, and working on that sound, man, Adrian really knows this stuff. It's one of those
Hmm.
things where I think it's such an underrated portion of, especially an independent project. I know when we went and seen Chris Stuckman's Auditorium 6 years ago, that was one of the first things we both had talked about was just how great the sound design was, and then how it's one of those things that you may not notice it at first, but if the sound's not there, it really does take you out of anything, a short, an actual feature, anything like that. So it's like really being tedious with that stuff. It makes it count.
Absolutely. And, it's just been kind of an interesting experience to watch this thing grow over the last few weeks from that, because I remember when we had the assembly cut that I had sent you over with all the onboard camera sounds with the Rode mic. It's like to see that and then to see where it is now, it's just night and day. And yeah, it truly is a make or break for your film, as we're learning is that good sound goes a long way. And it's like David F. Sandberg has a great video on his channel where he goes over that and just talks about how if you could have a somewhat distorted image, but if you have good sound, then it's like your audience will stick through that, or you can get through that. But if you have bad audio and a clear picture, it's very tough to sit there and try to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things. I mean, we talked about in the announcement where actually sitting down or, going on set, so to speak, and putting this together, this project, and then having that editing process and the sound and everything really gives you a new appreciation for everything that we discuss. That, there are other people's projects that we're going to the theater to check out or we're checking out on the streaming service, because even putting together a 10-minute short, it grew from a weekend project to a month-long process. And it's like, looking at a 90-minute, a 120-minute feature, you can't imagine how much work goes and how many people have to be so dedicated showing up every day to get these projects done. And some of them turn out great, some of them don't turn out great, but there's always hopefully that next one on the horizon to get that second chance if it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to. But again, it's hard to not be, no matter the quality of a project, it's hard not to be married to it, because you're in the studio, you're um, working on the dialogue, you're working on just the sound in general and the effects, so it's like one of those things
Hmm.
where it pulls at your heartstrings, when you listen to a director or someone who clearly has a love for either a new property or an established property, and they're going into it with a fresh set of eyes and really trying to progress and bring something either new to the table, hopefully, whether it is an established property or something completely new for a horror audience or just an audience in general.
Yeah, and again, newfound respect for sure, but at the end of the day, it is one of those things where, as hard as this process has been, and don't get me wrong, it's been rewarding, but it's difficult, just because of time constraints, and it's such an interesting process, making a short film or a movie, and just the sense of like, by the end of day one, you might feel good, like, okay, I can direct, I can, get actors, I can assemble people to start making this. But, when you look at that footage for the first time, it's just that up and down experience of like, okay, the shoot's going well, everything's cool. And then you sit down and you look at your edit and you're just like, oof, like there's things that I could have done better here. There's things I could have done there. And it's such a give and take process. And, I'm just happy to say that I think we are at the point now, obviously with the trailer out, that I can say that, I know pretty much how this is going to shake at the end. And I can say that I'm happy and proud of it. But yeah, if this was, oh man, if this was just 3 weeks ago, I remember I called you on the first night of like getting the assembly together and just being like, this thing's a fucking mess. Like, we've wasted everybody's time. I had like a goddamn mental breakdown. So if you plan on, taking a step or diving into it, just know that there are going to be lots of ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but stick through it, have confidence in yourself and your team, and yeah, it'll come out pretty good. So I'm very proud of Sycophant right now.
Yep, absolutely. And again, we talk about in the announcement. It's get the film made. We've had lots of stops and starts and stops in terms of making short films, and this is the first one that really, we saw through to completion, and it gets us hungry to do more. And obviously, there are talks between us of other things that we're going to be doing and tackling. But if anyone wants to take a stab at a short film, I mean, absolutely, 100%, we recommend it. It's something where you get a new appreciation for going out to see a film in the theater, and you get an understanding of what the process is and how tedious it can be. But it's so fulfilling, and everyone has a unique voice out there, and I can't say more than enough to get out there and tell your story and see it through, whether it takes a weekend, a month, 6 months. I mean, we talked to Robbie Banfitch and how long it took him
Mm-hmm.
to make the Outwaters, and that turned out phenomenal. But it's that dedication, and you feel just that newfound respect for filmmakers in general. And I mean, it's such you feel that stamp of, oh, we completed this, we got it done, we have something out there to show someone.
Absolutely. And I think we can kind of pivot from our own endeavors and kind of start talking about some of the news. As you said, this might be a little bit of a jam-packed version of the Sunday Scaries, because before we actually get into the four wonderful stories we have here, I just kind of wanted to, throw it over to you here, Luke, for a second. Um, do you have any stories in mind? I know we didn't really talk about this beforehand, that stuck out to you, that we missed from the last few weeks that you wanna mention? Because I mean, since we haven't been doing the show, there's been a lot of stuff that's come and gone, and I've just got to say, like, the horror news has not slowed down.
Not at all. One of the things that just as we kind of set the format here, there probably wasn't even enough to actually make it onto the format in general, but they released a little teaser of Chuck Russell's new projects, Witchboard, which is a remake from, I believe, 1986.
Hmm.
Just a short little trailer. I don't even know if it's a full minute. I didn't take the runtime of it, but it looks pretty interesting. CGI looks a little questionable. Hopefully, I don't think it's coming out to 2024 is what I think the ending said. But Chuck Russell of The Blob. So of course that piqued my interest. I'm very intrigued. I did a while ago, as that was announced. It was something that was on the docket at some point, well, in discussion that never made on the Sunday Scaries during its initial announcement. That Witchboard is, I think, free on a lot of platforms right now. The original. I gave it a passive watch a little bit ago, and it intrigued me. It's something I got to sit down and watch, more in depth. But it's got that '80s feel. I'm intrigued to see what they're gonna do with it. I mean, it revolves around a Ouija board and
Hmm.
an evil spirit. I don't know. Did you have a chance to check out the trailer for it?
I have not, no, but I'm looking at the article on Bloody Disgusting right now as you're talking about it. And I mean, it's Chuck Russell, so you were someone who got me into his wheelhouse. So that is somebody that I definitely am intrigued to see what they've got to bring to the table. Like you said, maybe the CGI isn't fully there, but I mean, I'm sure he's working with a pretty low budget. And, again, I love The Blob. The Blob from the 80s is seriously, if you guys have not seen it, one of the greatest. And if you go back onto the Spotify page or anywhere else you can listen to your podcasts, you can find an old episode from back in 2020 where we discussed The Blob in detail. So, yeah, just a little side treat there for you. But yeah, no, I'm interested. I'll definitely check it out more after, probably right after we get off here. I'll look it up.
Yeah, it has my interest. Of course, unfortunately, Frank Darabont is not attached to any writing aspects of it. So we'll go into it as a Chuck Russell property. Hopefully, I'm going to be positive on it, but it's still up in the air. But I'm excited to see him back in the horror realm. And hopefully, this is just the starting point for him to kind of get that reboot of his horror career and kind of really get deeper into the roots of the horror genre.
Oh, absolutely. Anybody who, has a legacy like that, we'd love to see him come back. One of the big things that I wanted to talk about, and I knew we weren't going to be able to, just because we were kind of right at the tail end of shooting and editing for the short film, was I think was it last week? Yeah, I believe it was about 10 days ago, as of recording this, that Godzilla Minus One, the new Toho Godzilla movie, just got announced, and there was a brief little trailer. And yeah, I am very excited for this. I mean, literally, you guys know me. You guys know the monster love and the channel and everything, and how much I love my creature features. But Godzilla is a special one to me for sure. And I love the Toho Godzilla movies. I thought that Shin Godzilla was phenomenal. I think it's one of the best Godzilla movies in ages. And this seems to be taking a different approach, but still leaning into the side of Godzilla is not a good guy, which is kind of a lot of what we have in the Legendary series. Luke, did you look into any of this?
No, I don't. I'm completely fresh on this, so enlighten me.
Yeah, so this is going to be pretty cool. So what they have going on is this is going to release in Japan on November 1st. And honestly, one of the things that I was worried about, because this has always been a notorious thing with all the Toho Godzilla movies, is that they were going to probably have a long window between it releasing in Japan and it releasing in the States. We only have to wait a month. So it'll come out November 1st, and then it'll come out in the States on December
Do
1st.
they do like a limited theatrical release for these? Like
Yes,
Shin Godzilla did,
usually.
didn't they?
Yes, yeah, they usually do. I can't say yay or nay on if this is going to be limited or as limited. It's kind of gone back and forth. Like if you go back to the early 2000s when Toho had another run with their Godzilla series, they had a few that were like, most of the theaters in the States were playing them. But like Shin Godzilla was kind of a slow rollout. But again, I think that might have been intentional
Hmm.
to try to do that. And it was kind of a rough time because I know the reason that Toho really hasn't been, because like Shin Godzilla was a big success for them, especially over in Japan. But the reason they haven't been, just making more of these consistently is pretty much because of just the legendary films and the rights. And Toho doesn't want to just like have to compete with the United States version. So it's like I knew that we'd probably have to wait till after Kong versus Godzilla came out to get another. But yeah, by the time they release this, we'll only be a few months away from the next installment in the Kong and Godzilla for Legendary. But I digress. More Godzilla, the better. This one though is pretty great because this is going to be taking place uh, in 1954, so the same year as the first Godzilla film came out, and this is just going to be post like a few years post the bomb dropping on Japan,
Okay.
or yeah, the bombs, I should say.
Yeah.
And so it's bills itself as Japan at its absolute weakest moment in their history. And yeah, suddenly a giant monstrous atomic breath wielding lizard comes to fruition. So I'm all about this. I'm very excited for it. I will definitely be keeping you guys posted on this, and I'm sure I can probably get Luke to go to the theater and check this
Oh,
out.
I'll check it out. I
Yeah,
really
it's
gotta dust off some of this Godzilla stuff. I've
mm,
always mean to, because I was a fan as a kid, and then
mhm,
just it fell out of my wheelhouse, and I never recovered. But there's some things I know you speak highly of. What Shin Godzilla, and I
mhm.
have yet to see that one. It's always on my watch list to check out.
Yeah, Godzilla
Um,
versus Biollante is another one that I'd recommend for you. Like, there's some that probably won't resonate with you, especially those ones from the '60s where Godzilla gets a little goofy. He's a little bit more of a kid's character,
yeah.
but he's gone through so many iterations. And yeah, I would definitely recommend some of those from the mid '90s, early 2000s, and then also of course, the 1954 original Japanese cut. Don't The King of the Monsters is fine, but it is so whitewashed and like boiled down compared to what the original intent of that film was.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I'm really intrigued. I know you own the whole Criterion set, don't you?
Yep, and that's got like the first two eras of Godzilla, like all in one. So all the early stuff there. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. But I am definitely willing to let you borrow it, sir, if you'd like to take a dive. And then
Absolutely.
I don't know, do you have anything else? Because there's really only one more thing I wanted to touch on before we dive into our stories here.
Nothing that I want to bring to the table at this point. I know I'm keeping an eye as we're recording this. San Diego Comic Con is
Hmm.
happening. I know they've released some interesting stuff.
A
We
lot of
haven't,
goodies.
yeah. So I think don't hold us to it. I know we're getting back in the swing of things. I'd love to, as SDCC kind of completes. I'm sure there's going to be a handful of things that are probably going to really catch our eye. So we
NECA
may,
stuff,
yeah,
especially.
yeah, maybe we'll either work it on to next week's Sunday Scaries, or if there's enough there, maybe we do a short video on it. We'll see.
Hey, I would always be down. One of the things that's not super horror, but one of the things that I saw from last week that was pretty cool is that limited run. They release a lot of Switch games and stuff. They do
Mm.
exactly what it says, a limited run of them. But they're doing a bunch of the classic Jurassic Park games.
Oh, okay.
Is going to be coming out, so I've actually that might get me to pick up my Switch again, which I love my Switch, but there's just nothing to play ever. And yeah, the last story I wanted to touch on was just the our last video on the channel before we did the announcement was our Insidious the Red Door review. And I just kind of wanted to highlight how that won the box office that weekend, and it was pretty cool. I mean, just a week after Indiana Jones came out, Insidious: The Red Door takes it at number one, and then has continued to be very profitable. And it just passed 120 million at the start of this week as well. So, yeah, good for them. Good for Patrick Wilson. I know they did say that this is going to be the last Insidious for a while. They're letting the series
They
take a break.
claim.
That's what they say, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think looking at that one, we were pretty positive
Hmm.
coming out of that one. I know there is a discourse, so a lot of people seem to be negative on that
I
one.
know. I was a little surprised by that. Even our buddy Evan had some pretty big critiques with it, but I mean, it's the nature of the beast, I guess. Everybody kind of has their own take on it.
Yeah,
You and I were kind of a little bit more, I guess, intrigued with the elements of like, hey, we're going to focus up on the family and we're going to focus up on just, them going through the day to day, as to where some people thought that might have been a little bit more mundane and not what they were going for. So,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, like for me, I don't really watch reviews too much. I caught a couple. It seems like the sticking point is they didn't explain the farther enough, but I don't think that was really ever on the table for me. But um,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I mean, maybe we'll get that down the line. But going into that film, I wasn't really expecting that, so I guess I wasn't that disappointed in that. At least, yes, the third act is rushed as we talked about, and it feels like maybe there's some missing there. But overall, I was pretty happy with it. I am
Hmm.
definitely intrigued to see that one again.
Yeah, no, me too. It's one I definitely want to pick up. Uh, and I will have to just complete my Insidious collection on digital. So, which I'm pissed because literally I bought that collection of the 4 pack,
Yeah,
and then like a week later, so like early this week, I think on Vudu, I was scrolling around, and they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we have a 5 pack now," and it was only like $8 more than what I
of
paid
course.
for the 4 pack, and it was like literally you get your pre-order in, so when Red Door comes out, you would have the whole collection there. I'm like, fuck, like all right, whatever.
You're
I'll
like,
just
can I
have to make my
return
own
this?
list. Yeah, right. I wish you could for stuff like that, but yeah, it is what it is. Uh, and yeah, so I think now is as good a time as any. Why don't we hop into our 4 main stories
Let's do it.
and see what's going on? And so we got some pretty interesting shit. Obviously coming back to it, I was pretty happy with the news that was hitting. Some of this as we go along. There's going to be follow-ups, whether they be standalone videos or they're going to be next week Sunday Scaries, because I mean there's already one that we know has a trailer floating around,
Yep.
but we'll get to it here in a second. But let's start off with the first look at Jigsaw in Saw X. Yes, so this I'm kind of surprised we didn't get a trailer yet, because they had this come out like 2 or 3 days ago,
Yeah.
and this was like one of the big things. The images here, they talked about how they pushed the release date, so now it's coming out on September 29th. I think that they want to stay clear of Exorcist, because I think that that one's starting to build some hype to it. But I mean, it's going up, so it's one of those things where it's going to be up an entire month basically.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess that's not a bad sign for Saw fans. That's definitely cool. The thing that really got me out of this was that this is going to be taking place during the events of Saw 1 and 2. So a direct sequel to the first and just predating the second film.
Yeah, I was surprised that that's where they were gonna go with it. There was a big question mark as to where Saw X was gonna fall in this timeline and what the concept was going to be. For me, I don't know how I feel about it. My worry is that we're gonna just start telling stories in between a lot of the other installments, and it's just gonna, we're gonna be living in that space for next year and the year after and the year after. You know what I mean? Where Saw had that
Hmm.
run where it was coming out almost annually, I think, before they took their big break. So I'm hoping we don't end up getting Saw 11 in a year and saying it's taking place in between Saw X and then Saw 2, and we're kind of getting in this jumbled timeline. I think the little synopsis that they did give us seems pretty intriguing. It seems more so that we're really kind of drawing that line almost of that uh, Jigsaw is going to be almost a hero in this. It feels like, as opposed to um, the villains of it. I had read a little more expanded upon. I believe it was on Wikipedia, so I mean, take it for what it's worth. I don't know if it appeared anywhere else in an article saying that he realizes it's like a big con, and he's kind of going after everyone who's conning all these other patients. So it really seems like they're drawing that good and bad line in this one. So I'm intrigued to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I mean, I for me, the Saw franchise will always, I think, have peaked at number one, just for being such a fun concept, and like fun concept, but like everything was so simple. Like the traps were simple, the climax was simple, the twist was nice. Like, it was all it's James Wan and Lee Wanell at the start of their career, just making a tiny movie to get out there. And I've had fun with some of the other sequels. Like you go into that 2 and 3, I'd probably say up till about 4, they're fun, and then they kind of start to really get weird and convoluted and people start taking on, like we didn't know that he had this apprentice and that apprentice, and the
Yeah,
timeline starts getting all jumbled. You saw Spiral, didn't you?
I did.
I feel like we talk about this every time we bring up Saw X because I still
Yeah,
haven't seen it. So
and it's one of the ones that I'd say go ahead and watch it. I thought we were gonna get something different, but I think at the end of the day, it just falls more so into another Saw film, and they try to put a slight spin on it. But Spiral is not something that you're going in saying, "Oh, this is very new and original." It really ends up falling back into the equation of the actual Saw franchise. So I mean, I think it's underwhelming in that aspect. Um, I think the performances are decent enough. I would say go out of your way and watch it. I think Spiral will stick out more so than some of the other installments in Saw. I think it'll be like, okay, that's definitely from Spiral, rather than my problem with Saw is the first two stick out in my head. The rest, I think maybe I've seen up to or five. I can't remember. I've seen bits and pieces, and it's like I can't remember. I can't distinguish what happens in any of the other installments just because they were coming out so frequently.
yeah,
And again, I think it always comes down to the visual aspect of the traps and the tension they build there. But, I think that only takes you so far, especially when they're coming out so quick. It's hard to kind of decipher this was in seven, this was in eight. So I think Spiral sticks out a little more in that aspect, but it's nothing that's going to wow you.
I know. And you got to think like too, like Danny Glover was in the first Saw film
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like just the amount of talent that attached themselves and got brought on and believed in that project was just kind of crazy. And then, it really kind of just leans on Tobin Bell the rest of it, because like most of the other films have actors who were in their infancy of their career, or aren't really big name actors at all. And then they bring back a couple of recognizable faces and everything, but for the most part it's just kind of like, it is what it is. And that's fine. If you love these movies, I have no issue with it. That's cool. Like, I'm glad that you guys are getting another sequel, but I think Luke and I sit in the same camp where we're just kind of like, I just would really like it if this movie could lean a little heavier into the story, take a little bit more time with the characters, and just give us something noteworthy and not just another trap fest and
Yes.
and everything. Because we saw, Jesus, what was that? Jigsaw was
Yeah.
the
Was it
one that we saw.
2017 maybe?
Yeah. Oh, that was rough. That was
Yeah,
real rough.
that was no good.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought maybe, Spiral was gonna be a palate cleanser in a sense,
Hmm.
and, I thought maybe they're gonna go that route, but for me, I felt like more so they pulled back on it, and they were too afraid to tell too much of a different story, and that's honestly what I thought maybe Saw X was going to. I didn't know when this was announced where it was going to be at in the timeline, or if it was just gonna be a post, after everything, in a more so current timeline. But obviously, it's not. This is my worry is that this is just falling back into everything else that we've seen with Saw, and
Yeah.
placing it in that timeline. It seems like an excuse just to do that.
And that's a very valid fear, because for the most part it seemed like Spiral didn't resonate with the hardcore fans of Saw as much. They weren't big on the fact that we didn't see Tobin Bell and
Hmm.
we didn't have a lot of returning faces. So the fact that this is kind of slating itself right back into the main timeline is, again, I think, pause for concern on that. But I don't know. It's they are kind of really trying to push that whole, not in the sense of recapping the timeline, but they want to hop on the bandwagon of, let's bring a popular horror series back and let's give it a little bit more attention, time, and care, like they did with Halloween, like they, well, for the first one, and then like they did with um a couple of the others are all slipping my mind right now. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, let's just see what it does. I will be there September 29th. We're
Yeah,
not going to miss it. We're going to get you guys a review. And yeah, I would, I'd be very happy to sit here and say that Saw X has given me something to look forward to.
yeah,
Or even if this is just the last one that they do for a while again, like, I'm okay with this not being an every year series. I would like maybe every few years we come to the table with something a little bit different. Like, it's run its course. I mean, for God's sakes, like you said, they're going to be up to 11 if they do this, if they keep going in the next one. So,
yeah.
you know,
And I mean, and I think that's probably where the Saw franchise tripped over its own feet in a sense, where they came out so frequently like that, it never got the audience a chance to catch their breath. So it's like, oh, I'm going in for another gore fest, and here we're back for another gore fest, and it's us being a horror podcast. Hey, we have no problems with gore fest, but sometimes you have to build that anticipation for the
Hmm.
franchise and make the fans want it, not saying, oh gosh, here comes another one. And I think by the end of the original Saw run, that's more so where a lot of the audience was.
Absolutely. But alrighty, let's move on to our next story here, talking about another franchise getting an installment that
Running theme.
this one more so than Saw, I did not expect. And I remember it being talked about, but I was so certain that it was dead
Yeah.
because of just how this last one shook out. But we're talking Pet Cemetery Bloodlines is coming to Paramount Plus, arriving this Halloween season, coming out October 6th. Yeah, this was a shock. I swear, like I did not see this coming. I don't know if it's going through, like, if this is going to be more tied to the older movies or if this is going to be tied to the remake. But yeah, I was looking forward to that remake. I thought that the guys behind Starry Eyes were doing it,
Yeah.
and that it looked like it had some good stuff going on there. But you get into that movie, and it is very, very paint by numbers, generic. We're following the bare bones beats of the Pet Cemetery story, which I know for some that might work. The twist was spoiled in the trailer, and that was really the only twist of the story. So it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, damn, like this movie is a slog, and I was not a fan. I know it has its fans, but I was not one of them.
And for me, never saw that remake. From my understanding, this one is a prequel to the remake.
Yes, but it doesn't bill itself directly as the remake. From what I understand, everybody is kind of confused on whether it's for the remake or if it's
The
for
original.
the original.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I don't know if it necessarily changes the story too much if the remake was very much a retelling, except for one little twist. I think maybe it kind of. I know that the original writer, I believe, from the remake is also attached to this one,
mhm.
because of the story that he had pitched initially, I think, and then eventually got greenlit. And now we're seeing Bloodlines. But for me, for this one, didn't see the remake. Not really a big fan of the original film. Big fan of the sequel. So it's like one of those ones. I think the sequel is always my preferred viewing. That's probably not a popular opinion, but Pet Cemetery is never a project, a Stephen King project that I've been obsessed with. It's nothing where I'm like, I have to watch Pet Cemetery. I only watch, again, I watch the sequel. That's something that I'll go back to and I'll turn that on when I'm doing something, but I never go back to the original. Haven't seen the remake. I think maybe I'll watch the remake, even though you don't speak too highly of it, just because this is going to be right at the start of Splatterthon. So
Yeah, we could review it too. I
yeah,
mean, like, we could do it. We might as well.
yeah, it's going to be streaming. So I mean, it's going to be out there. It's going to be accessible. Um, from the story, I don't know necessarily if you need to open up the roots of the Pet Cemetery lore. I mean, sometimes we get into this granular storytelling of we want to tell you, we want to connect every little dot for the audience. I don't know necessarily if it needs that. It looks like that's the route they're going to go to really expand upon the lore that surrounds Pet Cemetery. But it could be intriguing. I don't know if this one's going to shoot itself in the foot trying to overtell a story that doesn't necessarily need to be opened up that much. But it's going to be streaming. It's going to take zero effort to turn on Paramount Plus and give this one a watch. And I'm curious of what the runtime on this one's going to be actually.
Yeah, no, it's never a great sign. Like, we like to kind of go back and forth on that about it going straight to streaming. I say for this, it's not a great sign because of the quality of the theatrical release.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, we got a lot of great direct to DVD horror or direct to streaming horror last year. So, this could, surprise us. Now, what I really want to know is if this is going to be a, prequel to the remake. There's Wendigo in the Pet Cemetery lore, in the Pet Cemetery story in general.
Yeah,
And I really, really want to know if they're gonna kind of dive harder into that. I always want them to do that, where they just get a little bit more into the actual Wendigo itself and how it controls the cemetery and how it does all that. Like, let's see that. Like, that's really what I would like to get to if I had my way with it. But yeah, I mean, I'm here to check it out. I think that, I have Paramount Plus, so it's one of those things where it'll be free to basically just to sit down and watch it, and we can review it. It's some content for the channel, and it's something that I guess I'm looking forward to it in that aspect. Do I think that it's going to blow minds and be incredible? No. But if this is better than the most recent Children of the Corn, and it's better than the last
Firestarter.
remake or Firestarter, yeah, I forgot about Firestarter, then I would say that that's a slight win. Okay, that'll be a little bit of a win.
Yeah, and I'm not expecting much from here. I think what we have Henry Thomas in here as well as Pam Grier. So
Hmm.
some of the casting intrigues me. I'm curious to see what they're going to do and how well they're going to be used
Yeah, David
throughout this
Duchovny's
one.
in this too.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have a decent cast already announced here. Going to Paramount Plus for me, I mean, it always goes either way. Who knows whether this is, if that's an indictment on the quality of this or not. But Pet Cemetery, especially coming out in October when there's probably going to be there is a lot of legacy horror that's going to be coming out. I think this would be on a losing battle just because Pet Cemetery isn't necessarily, it's not it's not a Shining or anything like that. It is kind of fell by the wayside. And this one, I'm more intrigued to actually go into. Really want to read the novel here because I want to see where the original Pet Cemetery starts. If this is all complete original storytelling from that original pitch, and this is nothing based on any source material. I'm curious if that's the route they're going to go with, or if the novel Pet Cemetery does dive a little bit into the actual lore itself.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that the novel will probably always stand as the best
Yeah,
version of this story, which is not surprising. But there are some decent adaptations. We really like the Boogeyman. I really think that they need to
yeah,
do more of
surprise.
those with Stephen King. Just like take the short stories and expand upon them.
Yeah,
So
let that original voice shine through. So that's
absolutely,
why I'm curious here if this is not attached to really any Stephen King lore, and this is more
yeah.
so a conceptual thing by the original that writer of the remake. I'm curious to see, there's not really a leash there. It's like we're gonna take the reins off and then let you have fun. Which so this could have a different tone. This could have a different feeling completely because we're not basing this off source material. So I'm curious.
Absolutely. Alrighty, and then moving into another, this one more of a surprising announcement. Again, I didn't see the Pet Cemetery news coming, and I definitely didn't see this coming, but apparently we have some Return of the Living Dead reboot in the works. Will expand upon the existing world. Luke, this was the story you really wanted to cover. I know you're excited about this one. So tell me a little bit about this. What's going on with the latest and greatest for Return of the Living Dead?
Well, in a world of retcons and just complete reboots, this one seems that it's going to be encapsulating everything. I know we have the original Return of the Dead, then we have part two, and then we also have part three. All came out within a span, I think, from 85 to maybe 93. And then the series was dormant for a little bit, and then I believe in the mid 2000s we had two. I believe they were Sci-Fi Channel installments.
Mm,
Um, those ones I had never seen. I've seen the first three. Obviously, from what I hear, expect Sci-Fi Channel quality filmmaking from those two. So I think that one, uh, most people believe that pretty much killed the franchise. And then we kind of get this announcement saying it sounds like they're encapsulating everything from that original film all the way up to the mid 2000s films. Whether that means that there's expanding upon any storytelling or just saying okay, we're not disregarding anything. We're just taking it all in, and then we're going to build a completely new, fresh story. So I don't know exactly what that's going to entail. If this is going to take place in current time, I'd be intrigued to say, hey, something happened in 1985, and we're still going through here in 2025 or whenever the release date is going to be here. But I think there's a director already announced for this. Someone that's newer. I don't. I His properties. I don't think I had seen any of them, so I don't really know what to expect in that realm. But I think they've promised to keep the kind of horror as well as the dark humor here. So
Mhm.
uh, I don't really know what to expect here. I didn't think that we were going to get any Return of the Living Dead stuff anytime soon. It wasn't really, again, on my bingo card. And how I feel about it, I don't know. The jury's out for me. Again, this is something where you brought up the Boogeyman, where I didn't know what to expect from that director at all going into that film, and I think we were kind of pretty pleased. So just because we don't have a named director here of someone who's pretty established doesn't mean that it's going to be a negative. But for me, I think it's going to come down to the writing here, and no one's been announced in terms of saying who's screenwriting this, but uh, sitting with it, I would love to see someone like a Kayla Cooper tackle this because she's done Malignant and Megan. I think doing some dark humor with horror works in her wheelhouse, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, it's going to be tough with the writer's strike, though. So this is
Yeah,
probably something that's already been penned. But it is something that
I don't know. Have they announced when this is even? I mean, is this just announced?
I
You know what I
believe it's
mean?
just announced that it's in the works, and then they have Stephen Wolsh, who did Muck and Kill Her Goats, is the director here. So it's like I don't think that there's any kind of release date. It looks like it's more just getting it out there that hey, we are
This is
working
coming.
on more of Return of the Living Dead, and that first film is amazing. I've seen none of the sequels.
Okay.
I've seen nothing. I want to see the others. I hear that their two is pretty entertaining, but I hear that they get varying quality as they go along.
Yeah.
And I will always hold that first one near and dear. I think that that is just a perfect time capsule of just like comedy and horror and just overall a very unique concept, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It has a good time, and yeah, it's just one that I always catch myself just throwing on, especially because for a while there it was on Shutter, so it's like I would just throw it on randomly just to have, and it's a great film. If you guys have not seen Return of the Living Dead, it is totally worth your time sitting down and watching it. You'll laugh. You'll be freaked out. I mean, just the Tar Man himself is one of the most impressive effects. There he is right there. Like, seriously, up there with, we talked about it, the Blob and
Yeah.
the Thing, in my opinion, of just creativity and just long lasting images. He is, I know they had a NECA figure back in the day for him, but that is one I want an ultimate figure of, is the Tar Man.
Absolutely. And I think like looking at Return of the Living Dead, to be honest, I think that is my like epitome of a great zombie film. That's something that
It's damn close.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'd say that and Shaun of the Dead are up there as some of the best horror comedies in themselves
Yeah.
too.
And I think for me, Return is something, I can watch once a month until the end of time, and it still never gets old for me. So it's like trying to say, we're going to keep that tone and bring it, you know, to today. That's a big statement,
It
because
is.
it is such, when we're talking zombie films, it's such ingrained in there as such an iconic film. They really do have to live up to it. And the sequel, obviously not as good as the original. I think it's a fun double feature. Three for me really just feels like when you get into those earlier 90s horror, it really feels like leftovers from the 80s of, hey, we didn't know what to do. And that really is what that film feels like for me. So anything after two, I mean, I haven't seen the mid 2000s stuff. I can't even imagine the quality there. But, all that stuff for me, I can really honestly disregard. But yeah, again, being in the wheelhouse of Return of the Living Dead, are we in zombie fatigue? Yes, I believe we are. I think we really have to, you have to really have a unique spin or have a unique voice of if you want to tell a zombie story in modern times, just because we've seen so many different properties. So again, it really comes down to the writing a team attached to this and what direction they're going to go with. So I mean, I'm intrigued at this announcement, but I'm also very hesitant because of that original film and the love I have for it, and I don't honestly know what direction they're going to go here. But we'll keep tabs on it. Hopefully, we get some more news eventually, and hey, this could end up dead in the water in 6 months. So who knows?
Yeah, you never know. And I mean that is the dicey roll with announcing something this early.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. We will see what happens. And yeah, I would be intrigued. We'll see if this ends up on in theaters or on a streaming service too. That's something that I'll be very curious to check out. But alrighty, why don't we move on to our last story of the day with, of course, the big news, the one that everybody has kind of been clamoring for, and the one that potentially later today I'll have a short out for. But yes, we're talking about The Exorcist Believer has not only released three posters this week for the film, which is kind of like our first real imagery for the film other than the title, but we also have a trailer playing in front of Oppenheimer. And yes, I'm going to see Oppenheimer today. So I will let you guys know. I'll probably do a little short if it hasn't already dropped online by then of my thoughts and feelings on just that alone.
Yeah, and I don't know what to think, to be honest. I mean, like, I I saw the posters. I mean, for me, the posters scream of unoriginality. You know what I mean? And I think that's my I don't know what to think after sitting through the Halloween, David Gordon Green's Halloweens. And this stuff just doesn't seem it's not really hitting with me. Like, the original Exorcist, absolutely phenomenal film. I mean, it's iconic in the horror genre. When we initially talked about this way back when it was announced, and uh, was this something that really needed to be dusted off? And is it going to resonate with modern audiences? I lean toward it won't. Um, I know this thing had some bad test screenings, back in, I don't know if it was May or something like that, where I believe they said it was, not scary and boring, which I think you run that risk with the story that you tell here.
I think test screenings too. I've been seeing this a lot lately. Like there's a lot of people that come out and say that test screenings for movies have been uh pretty terrible. Like I saw a thing that test screenings for Barbie were really bad. And I just saw that last night, and that movie was fucking hysterical. That movie understands exactly what it's trying to be, and there's been others too. I'll try to think of it while we're talking here, but I know test screenings for me, I it's tough for me to sit there and be like, okay, yeah, this is good. Like this is I can trust this. And because like and the other things is like I've read stuff for test screenings for movies that I don't care too much about, but then I'll go and see them, and you just realize that that person was blowing complete smoke up our asses and was just like it's not at all what happened in the movie. So it's just kind of like it's they're dicey, but yeah, I mean as opposed to David Gordon Green's track record with us, I agree with you. I think that the posters are pretty uninspired. I mean, like it's they're pretty basic. But I remember when Halloween 2018 came out and that poster came out. I had texted you about it and we had a conversation. This was when you were still very positive on it, so you had to kind of sway me into being like, "Don't the poster. It is what it is." It's like it's not because I was sitting there going, "Oh, they're doing the tattered mask again," and it's just a mask. I'm like, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, but yeah, no. I mean, I think maybe that's why I wasn't so surprised
Mhm.
by just the imagery here. I haven't seen much on the preview. I've seen a few tweets from people who've seen Oppenheimer already. Who some people say that it looks great, some people say that it looks boring, like you said, some people say that it just looks like uninspired. So it's kind of seeming like a mix there. And again, this is a series I'm not too attached to. I don't have like an affinity, a love for The Exorcist. I saw the first one years ago. I plan on picking up the 4K for it before the new ones come out, and then rewatching it, and then we'll probably review it on the channel. And then obviously, our boy Evan wants us to really check out Exorcist 3, so we'll probably have to get him on here, and we'll probably all have to talk about that because you've never seen that, right?
No, I haven't. I've never
Neither have I.
seen anything
So
past the first, so.
yeah, so it's one of those things for me. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'm still kind of in that place of like, let's see what happens. But I think again, I'm still gonna say I'm positive because it's not like you're messing with like the holy grail for me, like they would with the Halloween movies, where it's like I am going to be very particular about that series and how you handle things and how you do stuff. For this, I'm just kind of going to be more on board for the ride, and I'm still sitting there. So until I see that trailer later today, I guess I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, that's a poster. It is what it is. I think we've been many years away from the days of the great Drew Struzan style posters
Yes.
and things like that. That's like when you get something like that, it's such a refreshing, awesome look of just like the hand airbrushed painted posters. Like that's the stuff I miss. And like if horror movies especially should, I feel like, always lean into that, because when you get like those covers for like Scream Factory shit and everything, or like the cavity color shirts and stuff, like, dude, they're so fucking good. Like, look at that lithograph behind you, look at that Halloween 3 poster behind you. It's like those, they're iconic.
Yes, and that's where it's like, you know, the horror merchandising of Scream Factory, Cavity Colors, all these shirt companies. I mean, they really have their fingers on the pulse of what the horror community wants. These, when we go into here, they just look like set shots that they posted, that they put on a poster. Really, there's really no gravitas for me to them. It's just like, oh, okay, well, this is something from the film. It doesn't really resonate as to something that I have to see this. And like going into this again, I am not attached to the Exorcist franchise in any sense. I enjoyed the first film, but like looking at this, what I don't want, and what a lot of these, when we're dealing with this subject matter, it's one of the reasons I didn't want to go see Pope's Exorcist, where I feel like the subject matter, it can be such a slog to get through. Where it's like, what I don't want is to go sit down in a theater and sit there for over 2 hours and be bored. And that's what I fear I'm gonna go in and see. Where, looking at David Gordon Green's Halloweens, those are slashers. So like you don't have really time to be bored. You can be irritated by the choices that they make, but Michael's on the screen doing something. You're going from gore to gore to gore. And with this one, it's all about the pacing. That's where I think the details in the original The Exorcist, where it's like you have that journey to tell and the pacing there and the tension that they built. If it's not there in this one, it's just going to feel like a long droning process. And I feel like that's what we could be walking into. So I'm very hesitant to go into this. I'm not negative because I love the franchise. I'm just negative on the subject matter, and I know what kind of uh where this can fall, what kind of well we can fall down when we're dealing with this.
Absolutely. And with the directors and writers track record, it's there's only so much we can really put on this. And I
Yeah.
say his horror track record, because
Yeah.
yes, we talk a lot of shit about David Gordon Green, but we're still talking about the guy who made Prince's Avalanche and 50/50 and all these other great fucking
Yes.
comedy dramas. He also produces Righteous Gemstones and other things like that. So it's like, the dude is great. Like Vice Principals, you ever seen that, Luke? Like that
No,
show
I
is
haven't. I've seen
phenomenal.
clips of it, but I've never sat down and watched
That
it.
show is so fucking funny, dude. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, for me, I think that, as far as their horror outings go, they're no Jordan Peele. I mean, like they haven't transitioned to beautifully from comedy to horror. But I'm still gonna check this out. I reserve my full thoughts and feelings until I see this trailer later today. If you do end up watching it, Luke, online, and you feel like you want to do a separate video and talk about it, or if you guys really want us to do a separate video and talk about it, feel free to comment below. We'll discuss it. Maybe later this week we'll pop one out, just doing a little trailer discussion. Because again, I think that it is kind of the flagpole, like, or tent pole horror film of the October
I
season
think
right
so,
now.
yeah.
I think this is probably the one that everybody's got all their eyes on. And so it's going to be one of those things where it's like, I think that the more we could talk about it, the better it would be, just in sense of like, we will probably have more to say after the trailer comes out, is what I'm trying to
Absolutely,
get at.
boy.
So,
October's already stacking up, and we're gonna kick off end of
dude,
September with Saw X. we're gonna have Bloodlines,
Mhm.
Believer, and then Five Nights at Freddy's already announced.
Yeah.
So who knows what the hell else is gonna pop up in
Oh yeah,
October?
and then you don't know what Screambox has up their
It's
arm
gonna
right
be a
now.
busy,
You know,
busy month,
Shutter will
man.
probably have a couple things. Other streaming services, maybe Hulu will have something nice and original they can throw at us. But yeah, it'll be pretty wild. It'll be another crazy splatterthon. But yeah, I'm very excited for it. I'm looking forward to it. We're already working on lining up the content. You know, it's about to hit August, and that's when we got to start doing it. We started a little bit in August last year, and yeah, we still found ourselves
Yeah.
reporting on oh so much. So yeah, the month of October is no longer a peaceful time in the Newell and Genesco household. It is a busy, busy, got to get to work time. So
But we love it.
we do. All righty. But yeah, that is going to wrap it up for the Sunday Scaries. We went almost for an hour, but we knew this would be a jam packed episode, our returning episode. And yeah, we are going to be back week to week here. Of course, you know, obviously, if there doesn't seem to be a lot of news, you know, kind of how we were doing before, where we might miss a week here and there. But for the most part, we will be back in the saddle, getting you your horror news and everything as we move along here. We'll have more updates on our film Sycophant as time goes on. We'll definitely let you guys know if we placed at the Akron Independent Horror Short Film Festival. It's a long title. But yeah, we'll definitely let you guys know about that. And we have a lot of great content coming to you guys this week. So yeah, that about wraps it up. Luke, you got anything for them as we wrap up this episode?
No, not too much. Stay tuned. Some interesting reviews and interviews dropping this coming week. So a lot on the docket already. We have Talk to Me coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Already seeing a lot of great stuff coming out. So I'm gonna hope that
I'm
lives up to the
anticipating
hype.
it.
Yeah. And then some streaming stuff coming up as well. So some docs maybe in our down the line here and on our journey to Splatterthon. But yeah, stay tuned. A lot coming up, and definitely expect some more videos. We'll make it up to you guys since we took a little bit of a break here, but we are back in full force right now.
All righty. Well, that about wraps us up, guys. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.